Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast and to my Autistic Fear of Weight Gain series. In part 1, we explored how eating disorders in autistic people often aren't about weight or shape, but rather about finding safety in an overwhelming world. I shared my personal story and explained why viewing eating disorders through the lens of control misses the point entirely. In this episode, I'm going to unpack 8 different reasons why autistic people might fear weight gain, offering a more nuanced perspective on the typical fear of fatness narrative.
Gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be around the corner soon.
Welcome to the Live Label Free podcast, where we talk about autism, ADHD, eating disorders, existentialism, and everything in between. I'm your host, Livia. Now let's get into it. Number 1, sensory sensitivities. Weight gain is an incredibly sensory-rich process. Different parts of your body expand, your shape changes, clothes fit differently, and parts of your body may touch or rub against each other in new ways. For an autistic person, this is like sensory overload on steroids. When I gained weight during my own eating disorder recovery, I felt so trapped in a body that I experienced as wrong. It felt like my soul was being propped into a costume that didn't fit. By shrinking myself during anorexia, I didn't have to fit, and thus feel, the costume. Similar to plasmolysis, which is when plant cells shrink away from their cell wall due to water loss, restriction of food causes your body to retreat into itself, so you no longer feel like an exposed nerve ending, which is pretty much the default autistic experience. Number 2, no more numbing. We all know eating disorder recovery isn't just about the physical changes. It's about confronting all of the feelings, thoughts, and emotions that the eating disorder numbed you from. Because my anorexia started at age 11, I didn't even start puberty until I was in recovery at age 18. Can you even imagine? Not only was I gaining fat tissue in places I'd never had it before, but my hormones were going absolutely wild. And don't even get me started on getting my period for the first time. And honestly, every month it's still awful as someone who has PMDD, which I've done a whole separate episode on before on the podcast. But anyways, beyond these intense physical changes, nutritional rehabilitation also means the restoration of cognitive function, which for the neurodivergent brain means more thoughts going balls to the walls. Number 3, existential angst. When you're autistic, you already spend so much time worrying that you're doing life wrong. Like everyone else got some secret manual that you missed. Add to that the fear of doing weight gain wrong, and the entire process becomes so overwhelming. Not only are you trying to navigate a world that wasn't built for your brain, but now you're doing it while your body changes in ways you can't even control. It's all connected to feeling trapped in a human body. As autistic people, we already experience our bodies differently. Sensations are more intense, anxiety is heightened, and if you're like me, you may feel like you're walking around in a cardboard cutout of the world half the time. Weight gain elevates this trapped sensation. It makes you want to crawl out of your skin. The eating disorder provided concrete answers in a world that often felt too abstract, and recovery meant facing the terrifying reality that maybe there are no right answers. Number 4, identity crisis. For as long as I could remember, my identity was the athlete, the little skinny girl, the perfect healthy eater who showed no remorse when I was the only one who could resist all the food at holiday parties. For 7 years, anorexia was a core piece of who I thought I was. My eating disorder gave me a role to play, and I played it perfectly, even though the mask was slowly killing me. To gain weight meant to release this identity, and that was nothing short of terrifying. I talk about this identity crisis at length in my book Rainbow Girl because it's such a crucial part of recovery that nobody really prepares you for. When your entire sense of self is built around being small, disciplined, and quote-unquote in control, recovery isn't just about changing your body. It's about discovering who you are without labels. For neurodivergent people specifically, it's about unmasking, embracing your authentic self, becoming curious as to who you are before you judged everything about yourself. Hey there! Are you enjoying this episode about autism and the fear of weight gain? If so, you're going to love my books even more. At the time of this recording, I have 3 published books. My memoir, Rainbow Girl, available in both English and Dutch, my cookbook, Nourishing Neurodiversity, and my extreme hunger book, How to Beat Extreme Hunger. Each book takes a neurodiversity affirming approach to creating your unique version of food freedom so you can move forward in a way that works with your autistic mind rather than against it. And the best part is, you can now mix and match ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks to create your own discount book bundle at livelabelfreebooks.com. Just navigate to the Bundles tab at livelabelfreebooks.com, select the books you want, and happy reading! Now, let's get back to today's episode. Number 5, change. Here's something most people get wrong about autism. It's not that we hate all change. We only struggle with changes we don't initiate or want. I can spontaneously start writing a new book after receiving a burst of inspiration at the gym because I want to, while a last-minute change of plans can cause me to spiral into anxiety. Weight gain falls into that second category, as it's change we can't control. With weight gain, we can't decide where the fat will go, how it will distribute, or how much weight we'll even gain. We can't predict what clothes size we'll wear or how people might treat us differently when we look, quote-unquote, better. This lack of control over our changing bodies can feel so overwhelming, especially when we're already dealing with the daily challenges of being autistic in a neurotypical world. Number 6, the fear of being healthy. One of the most significant ways in which my eating disorder protected me was through shielding me from confronting the fear of being healthy, which I've also done a whole podcast on before. When you're already struggling to handle the world, the sensory overload, the social demands, the constant masking, the eating disorder ensures you don't have to deal with the expectations accompany being healthy. Gaining weight and becoming, quote-unquote, healthy means losing that buffer between you and the world. You're suddenly responsible for your actions and are expected to handle adult life in a world that already wasn't built for you. Number 7, desire for predictability. Another terrifying aspect of recovery was facing all the unknowns about how my body would change. How much weight would I gain? What would a bigger body feel like? What if that body was too uncomfortable? Where would I buy new clothes? All of these uncertainties can be so overwhelming that staying in the eating disorder just seems to be the quote-unquote safer option. A need for predictability is tightly intertwined with the identity crisis mentioned previously. Even though I was miserable in my eating disorder, it was predictable. I had my food and exercise routines down to a science. Being larger, that is to say, having another identity, was threatening because it was unknown. And humans, especially autistic humans who thrive on predictability, tend to stick with what we know, even if we also know it's hurting us. And finally, number 8, gender dysphoria. While this isn't part of my personal story, many of my clients have shared how their fear of weight gain connects deeply to gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria happens when there's a disconnect between the sex you were assigned at birth and the gender you identify with. For many people, this creates an intense desire to change their body shape, with restriction often becoming a way to suppress or modify gender-specific features. This adds another layer to the fear of weight gain because body changes during recovery might intensify gender dysphoria. Weight restoration can mean developing or regaining features that don't align with someone's gender identity, making recovery even more complex for autistic individuals that are navigating this disconnect. Now, you might be hearing me say all this and thinking, this makes sense. And what if I or someone I care for still says over and over and over again that they don't want to be fat? Well, I'm genuinely curious what lies beneath that fear. Is it really about the weight? Or is it about not being accepted? About being exposed? About being judged? About having to face all these deeper challenges we've talked about? The irony, of course, is that engaging with an eating disorder already makes you different. I always felt the eyes staring at me when I left the house. I knew that having a different plate at dinner wasn't considered normal. Yet at the same time, anorexia had become my version of normal. It was my identity, my safety net, my way of existing in the world. So addressing the fear of weight gain isn't really about the weight at all. It's about the willingness to create a new identity, one that allows us to exist fully in the world, even when that world feels overwhelming. It's about finding ways to feel safe without compromising our ability to live. And that's all I have for you today, my friend. In the third and final part of this series, I will share how I made peace with weight gain as an autistic person, from both a physical and metaphysical angle. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could leave a 5-star rating and positive review for the Live Label Free podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. If you're listening on YouTube, drop a comment. It makes this podcast more of a conversation. And before I sign off, I want to give you something for free, and that is my audio training, 3 Steps to Recovery from an Eating Disorder as an Autistic Person. In this training, I guide you through 3 simple steps to give you the clarity and confidence you need to use your autistic traits to your advantage in eating disorder recovery. It's like having a private coaching session with me on demand. Whether you believe being autistic is making recovery feel impossible or confused about what's your eating disorder and what's your autism, or are just feeling stuck, this audio training is the resource for you. And the best part is, it's free $99. That's right, this 45-minute audio training is completely free. So you literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Listen now at livelabelfree.com/free-audio training. So again, that's livelabelfree.com/free-audio training. Or you can just go to my website, livelabelfree.com, and it should speak for itself because there's a giant banner that says, listen to the free audio training. I hope to speak to you there, and otherwise, you'll hear my voice again in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Baby, just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see